Hello, everyone. Do you hear me? I don't know if the mic is working. Okay. So hello, everyone in the room and everyone else who are online. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon for this deep dive. I've seen many of you in the plenary, and this will be somehow the natural continuation of whatever has been discussed in the plenary. So this will be a real deep dive, a long session, where we will start with lessons from Uganda, and then we'll have less than 5 minutes so that we can change our panelists. You can go quickly to the bathroom, but don't stay too much, because we will have the second part that will look at the ecosystem approach. Then we will have another 5 minutes stop, not 2, 3, and we will delve into the third part, which is a debate that we hope will be lively. Actually, all of the session will be lively, so that post-lunch, we help you to stay engaged with us. So the first part will be this deep dive in Uganda. You've heard this morning from Opportunity Bank what they have been doing, what they have been doing in Uganda, but we will look at really other types of institutions that are working, and we will have, again, an FSP, Opportunity Bank, deep diving into whatever they are doing. We will have an investor, Grameen Crédit Agricole, and we will have a refugee-led organization, Bondeco, and they will have an opportunity to present themselves and to share with you what they are doing and who they are. So let me first start by a snapshot on Uganda. So what's happening in Uganda? Uganda is the #1 refugee hosting country in Africa and the 3rd in the world. Latest data from a couple of months ago, of course, from UNHCR, shows that the total refugees and asylum seekers, so that you can see, are 1.7 million. Almost 1 million, more or less, are from South Sudan, and you will see that they are concentrated in the blue areas, very close to South Sudan, to the countries from which they were displaced. And almost 500,000 of them are coming from Congo, from where Paul is, and they are mostly on the southern part of Uganda. What you can see in the picture behind is also a typical settlement. I think it's from Nakivale. And what I was really surprised, I mean, I visited first, I've been in Lebanon, I've been in Iraq, and I've been in Kenya. And every time when I visited, I want to talk with refugees, it was in camps. When I first was in Uganda, I was really surprised because I could not tell which house is which, because settlements concept is that the host communities and the refugees are together. You can see that it is very green. So 92% of the refugees in Uganda are in the rural areas, and most of them, a big chunk of them, are working in the farming and in the agricultural sector. So an estimation, to go back to the discussion, I mean, we are among financial service providers mostly. What has been estimated is that the market for financial services in Uganda for both refugees and host communities is of almost 500 million. So it's a huge opportunity for financial service providers, and actually many of them, financial service providers and investors, and many of them have been doing things. So there are 8 financial service providers that are working in Uganda, providing financial services to refugees. One of them is here. One of them is through one of the trio of the finalists of the award. And I'm sure that others, I don't know whether UGAFOD is here or not, but I know that they are attending the conference. There are MFIs, but there are also banks, and they are active into these host refugee areas, and serving both hosts and refugees. So what is very particular about Uganda and is the government policies and regulation of inclusion of refugees, of economic and financial inclusion of refugees, which is at the heart of the successful model. How does it translate in 2 aspects? The first one is the refugees' right and welfare. Uganda has a world-class welcoming and inclusive policy for refugees. So that this open door policy, meaning that right to move freely, no encampment policy, right to work, right to lease land and to lease property, and also the use and usage of public services for all refugees. And it is very much also linked to the self-reliance model. And this model, so upon arrival to Uganda, the government provides a piece of land to the refugees and a certain amount to build an accommodation and also to start farming. And this allowed a high level of self-reliance of refugees, and also allowed for financial service providers to build on that economic inclusion of potential clients. This also has been driven by a very progressive, inclusive financial sector policy through the work of the Bank of Uganda, but also of the other regulators and the governments, through a quite flexible and innovative KYC, by which the refugee card that is provided by the Office of the Prime Minister is recognized as valid for KYC, which opened up also the door for many FSPs to serve refugees. And also it opened the door for many FSPs to innovate in terms of tweaking products, in terms also of looking at other aspects of of collateral substitute, for example. So it was mentioned this morning, the VSLAs, the work with the VSLAs, with the groups is also something that is quite done in and leveraged by financial service providers. So this is a very quick snapshot, but we will delve much more with the panelists. And I have a first question for them. So we have seen from this morning, and we have debunked some myths. So we were talking about the flight risk, about refugees. Oh my God, never, never, never I'm going to lend to refugees because they are much more risky, because all kind of things. So we decided to look at the opportunities. So let me turn back to you and start by asking Tamsin, and then Hamed, and then Paul. The three of you, different organizations, are working in Uganda. So what are the opportunities that you see from working there?
Thank you, Yousra. Good afternoon. So my name is Tamsin Skirfield, and I work with Opportunity International. We've been partnering with Opportunity Bank, and my colleague Diana was sharing about her experiences with the bank. In Uganda since 2019, serving refugees. And I think, Yousra, you mentioned the enabling environment. So in terms of KYC, in terms of freedom of movement, in terms of refugees being able to own land and have the right to work, this was a really big opportunity for us. Yeah, I think that's what I would start with. Thank you.
Hanadi, from an investor perspective.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hanadi. I come from the Grameen Credit Agricole Foundation. We adopt an approach of blended finance. So we do investments, loans, and, and we used to do equity. We don't do equity anymore. And we do technical assistance as well. So for us, for Uganda, it was a new program that we wanted to fund in Uganda with refugees. And the opportunity was double-folded. First of all, that Uganda has the enabling environment. From a market perspective, you want to enter a new market because we're investors. We look at things from a market perspective. You want to enter a new market, you want less barriers. You don't start in the most difficult market. You start in a market where you can at least start doing some work. So we looked at the enabling environment, and it kind of encourages us to start working with the FSPs and start to tackle the issues that they face when serving this type of market. The second opportunity is, as you said, Uganda is the first in Africa. It has a huge community of refugees, which means a huge potential market as well. It's true they're concentrated in rural areas, so areas that are hard to reach by the FSPs. But this was our challenge and our opportunity as well. So we worked with the FSPs to help them reach those populations in Uganda.
Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Yousra. My name is Paul Kitima. I'm the CEO of Bondeko Refugee Livelihood Center. It's a refugee-led organization in Uganda. Yeah, the question is
The opportunities.
yes, it's not an easy one, but because first of all, Uganda is a country which has been described by the CIA World Fact book as one of the countries in the world facing numerous challenges, economic challenges. And yet they are hosting 1.7 million refugees. So there is already a problem which is there. But at the same time, we have so many opportunities, especially due to the Refugee Act of 2006, that, as you mentioned, has given so many opportunities for the refugees. We have free movement across the country and even outside, because like myself, I'm a refugee advocate. I do it at a global level in Geneva, and I can move freely thanks to the Refugee Act of 2006. But as organization Bondeko has been able to do in livelihoods, we are going to deep dive in that and to assist fellow refugees, but not only refugees, even the host community, because those are also part of the affected populations. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And I realized I didn't say to you who I am. So I'm Yousra Hamed. I work for the ILO. And among other things, I work for the past perhaps 10 years on financial inclusion for refugees and host communities. Thanks. So, and you are seeing some pictures so that the deep dive is a true one, so that you feel that you are in Nakivale, one of the settlements of Uganda that is in the south. And thanks to the Tamsin for providing the pictures. So a question to you, you've mentioned so that Opportunity International has this partnership with Opportunity Bank in Uganda. Mm-hmm. So you've been working together in bringing in or adapting products, processes. Mm. So what has been the journey? How did you arrive? So yeah, Diana mentioned that you've been, you started in 2019. So what was the journey for Opportunity Bank to arrive to really providing financial service to refugees?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really been a journey. So we started off going into the settlement, into Nacha Valley, which are the pictures you're seeing, in 2018. And it definitely did not look and feel like a typical refugee camp. And one of the participants on the previous panel mentioned the importance of the human touch, the change management from the leaders, and having buy-in from the leaders. And I was fortunate enough to be able to take the CEO of the bank at that time into Nacha Valley. And the moment he got there, he just said, we need to get a branch here. Like, that was it, you know? And he's a real visionary. So I think I really resonated with that comment. At the same time, that branch didn't happen for another 3 years. So Opportunity Bank started serving refugees in a tent, with an amazing acting branch manager. Prior to that, we had supported them with a series of human-centered design approaches and kind of mapping out the different players in the ecosystem. You know, for a bank and even for Opportunity International, working in a humanitarian space is it's a new area for us. And there are issues around protection that we really, and obviously humanitarian needs that needed to be considered. So we did a series of workshops and engagements with the different stakeholders, really looking at the cash flows and mapping the different cash flows between the players, while also trying to get to know different partners, UN, OPM, and of course the INGOs and refugees themselves. And then from that, we were able to identify 3 different segments, which my colleague Diana mentioned. So there's the dependence, there's the subsistence, and the reliance segments. And the dependent segments are refugees who really have, they're kind of on the one side of the scale, who have, humanitarian needs around, they've just arrived in country, they're looking at food, they're looking at shelter, they're looking at healthcare, education needs. So financial inclusion for them is not a priority. And then moving into the resilience and the dependence and the resilience. So dependence was more refugees who are more organized into groups, beginning to think about livelihood opportunities, saving, maybe investing something small for the future to start growing businesses, small businesses, you understand, of course, yeah. And so thinking about products that would suit the groups, this segment, which primarily fell into the group model. And then finally on the resilient side, we had independent refugees who at the time, and this was 5 years ago, we mapped easily over 1,000 entrepreneurs in Nature Valley alone, which was a lot more than we thought, because the numbers then, there were, was it 120,000? There was a lot fewer refugees in Nature Valley than there are now. And these are refugees who are really qualified and able and would benefit from loans as individual clients. The challenge with that was they didn't meet the bank's requirements, of course, particularly around collateral, the risk profile. Obviously, they had good cash flows, but at the time, the bank wasn't considering cash flows. And so individual refugees were put to one side, and the entry point was really the group, saving groups. And to date, Obl has opened 15,000 refugee accounts, both individual and group. So savings was really the entry point as a way to start the journey into financial inclusion, have a safe, secure place to save. And then out of those savings groups, we've seen just under 5,000 loans have been dispersed to date. So that's a pretty good number. On the products themselves, I mean, the group products, we distinguish between formal groups and informal groups. So everybody likes to talk about VSLAs, and that's definitely an entry point. At the same time, VSLAs in Uganda, the government's requirements, some of the processes involved to get them linked to the bank can be really costly in terms of time, in terms of money, and it can be very problematic. So often we'll start working with informal groups to be able to at least start them on the journey, whilst working with the VSLA groups or with partners to help them to get the documentation and registration they need. Just to give you some numbers so that you can get a sense of perspective. So the bank has opened 15,000 accounts, as I said, just under
savings accounts.
Savings accounts, yes, sorry. The portfolio at risk 30 days is currently under 5%, and it's one of the best performing in the country. And the non-performing loans was 3.1% last time I checked. So the performance has been really strong. And again, it kind of fluctuates. So there was a period where a lot of refugees were relocated, and the risk that the non-performing loans went really high. And of course, that memory stays with the bank, right? So when you talk to the business team and the head of credit, they'll all tell you, well, you remember that time, but it was one time. And of course, that's some of the challenges that we have to fight. I'm not going to go into guarantees because I know there's a session on that later, but just to say that Opportunity did and has benefited from a Kiva guarantee, and that has proved really instrumental in offsetting the perceived risk. And I would say perceived risk, because actually the risk has not been what we expected. At the same time, the perceived risk was a very real barrier to the bank itself. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I had a question on guarantees, but I'll keep it for later. Talking about the journey, so you mentioned the journey of Opportunity Bank to reach to the refugees. So from an investor's perspective, so I would like to also, Grameen Crédit Agricole is known for really looking at the end of the pyramid, most vulnerable groups, but not specifically targeting a target population, a particular group. So what has been your journey and what has been the levers that made you really concentrate and look at this group of refugees and host communities?
Well, for us, it was two things. First of all, Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation does prioritize rural areas, agriculture, because Crédit Agricole. So we work in hard to reach areas normally. So that's by our DNA. The second thing is the opportunity to partner with UNHCR, because UNHCR was trying to work on building a business case that refugee market is not riskier than other markets, or if it is riskier, the risk is not really much higher than other markets. And for us, it was a good opportunity to go there and work on a program that was funded by SIDA, Sweden, in partnership with UNHCR, to work with 3 MFIs in Uganda that were selected. And we tried to be as broad as possible. So one of the MFIs focus a lot of training and non-financial services. Another MFI focuses on savings groups and group loans. And the third focuses on individual lending. So we tried to have a spectrum that goes from refugees who need a little bit of money just to start something, to refugees who already have something established, but nobody will give them a loan because they need a loan of $800 or $700, which is huge for an MFI. So what we did was to partner in a blended finance approach. What we did was we provided those organizations with loans earmarked to the refugee hosting areas. We together built the planning and the budgeting of all this. So we did not come with an offer to the MFI and say, okay, this is what we want you to do. What we did is, in coordination with UNHCR, we built with the MFIs the idea, the focus areas, the region they would like to work with, where they saw opportunities, where they want to be. And we supported them with grant money to go and expand there. So whether you want to build a branch, whether you want to equip, whether you want to train your loan officers, train your people. And we gave them the loans for portfolio, like as a working capital. And it was good in the sense that we started end of 2019. The worst thing that happened was COVID hit in 2020. So it distorted the whole thing. So now you look at the program, you see the par like going like that. But to our surprise, during COVID, the refugee portfolio performed better than the host community's portfolio, slightly better. We don't know the reason. We have to do really deep dive to understand the reason. So I'm not gonna, but anecdotally speaking, sometimes when you lack everything, you really want to show that you're committed. So you go, that's why women, for example, sometimes are better clients. They're more committed because you don't have so many opportunities. When you get the opportunity, you really want to commit to this opportunity. You want to make the best out of it. After COVID hit, luckily we work with local organizations who know their market, who know how to address crises in the market. And I think the times have passed where you just work with internationals, they go to the country and they leave because it's not sustainable. So working with the local organizations was very good because these MFIs, they are MFIs. They know the business of an MFI. They know how to reach to a client. They know how to clean their portfolio. So what happened after COVID, our partners focused on cleaning their portfolio. So the loans, some loans were rescheduled, some loans were written off, some loans were refinanced, and some loans worked normally. And the project ended in 2023, October, so a year ago, exactly a year ago. We had reached 118,000 clients, our partners. Wow. Most of them are host communities, so only, but I think it's a very good number, only about 22,000 refugees, which is really big for a first pilot, and 97,000 host communities. The portfolio at risk was the same, basically, for both of them. So we closed at 5.9%. That was highly skewed by COVID effects. Before COVID, it was around, I mean, we didn't have a lot of time, but it was around 3 or 4. And if you look at some regions within this portfolio at risk, you will see it's even lower. And now we're trying to see with 2 of those partners to continue this journey, to see, because they started working, for example, in Naki Valley, and they want to expand more. What happened is that they open one branch, but then you have refugees who live like 20 kilometers from this branch. So they want to open satellite branches. The other good thing about that is everybody had skin in the game. So the MFIs also contributed to the cost. It wasn't free money when it comes to TA. So it was contribution from them, contribution from us. And on the lending, they performed very well. They repaid their loans, normally. We didn't have any issue with our MFIs, and we're so proud to have partnered with them. We had one MFI, the average loan size was 700 euros for refugees with bigger businesses. With the other MFI, it was 79 euros.
Wow.
So it reached a broad market. So yeah,
you mentioned,
thank you.
So you mentioned the importance of local organizations during COVID and how it helped to keep up afloat and keep up the relationship also with the different, I mean, you and your partners. And actually, we have one representative of such an organization here. So, Paul, if you can tell us a little bit also how perhaps the partnerships you are having, and also what type of challenges an organization such as Bondeco can help with your members, perhaps to reach financial services. What do you do to facilitate that? But perhaps also you are providing other non-financial services. And also you mentioned something very interesting in your presentation where you said you are also dealing and servicing hosts. So if you can tell us also, what do you see in terms of difference of needs and challenges between both?
Yeah, thanks, Yousra. And Hanadi, you touched my heart because I'm an advocate for localization. So this is really encouraging. So what we have been doing is really linked to our main objective as an organization. Bondeco wants refugees to be self-reliant and to enjoy human rights. So, and as I mentioned earlier, we don't focus only on refugees, but also we include the host community. So our first VSLA group was created within Bondeco back in 2013. And it was led by women because we are more on women empowerment. And we have tested it we took 10 years before scaling it up. So we had 10 years to test it because we were lacking funding to scale up the idea. But the result of during that time, we observed it was really phenomenal with tremendous success stories of people who could not afford basic needs in their household. They couldn't, they were not able to meet the physiological needs or even safety needs, and to buy at least even a bottle of water, of clean water. But when they joined those savings groups, thanks to the dynamic within those groups, they were able to borrow money from there after a certain time and to start up small income generating activities, and they became eventually self-reliant. So last year, in 2023, we got an opportunity to write a proposal and to be funded so that we could scale up now that model. And we have created since last year 33 more VSLAs in Uganda. And what we did, we gave them many different trainings, VSLAs, methodology, business and financial literacy. We provided entrepreneurship training, and very recently, last month, we completed a training in digitalization, and that was our response to the digital divide identified among the refugees communities and the host community with low income. So that's what we've been doing, and then we assisted them, and that's Tamsin said, you pointed out the difficulties of registering the VSLAs, and that's why for us we assisted them to register, and it was really hectic, but we had to do that because that's now helped them to access financial services, and at that point we linked them with financial institutions, and some of them are within this room or in this conference, like you talked about Opportunity Bank at the local level there. We partner with them. So we link them with those financial institutions so that they can access the services that. And yes, we have the numbers. They are accessing the services within those financial institutions. They can get loans, and others they've started even some income generating activities. And the 288 people among the 33 VSLAs, because each group has 30 members, and that is 990 people. And among them, 288 are nationals from the host community, which represents 29.01%, and 652 are the women, representing 65.9% of the total number we targeted. So, and at some point last year, we created a demonstration space for urban farming. We implemented a greenhouse. We do hydroponics there and fish farming. And we trained 180 people among the beneficiaries to go through that, because the training we give them, join a bit your vision, is we do agriculture which is climate smart. Yes, so that they have the opportunity either to do backyard gardening or to do it as a business. So basically, that's how we do. And also on top of that number, we got another partner who wanted to create a support hub within the organization, and where with a target of 200 refugees, and they are actually accessing the services they want through that hub, which is within the organization. So that's basically what we do, and so many other things.
Interesting, the fact to leverage the VSLAs and to strengthen them and to structure them. I was really surprised. So despite the fact that we said the regulatory environment is the most amazing in the world in Uganda, and that FSPs, 8 are all over the settlements, not all over, but in some places of the settlements, when you ask refugees, what type of service do you use most? Between 50, depending on the areas, between 50 to 95% will say either SACCOs, so financial cooperatives, or VSLAs. And this semi-formal to informal, depending on how they are registered. So this is the first entry point for either a newcomer or even someone who feels comfortable with their farmer group, with the community, with the relatives and nationals, to enter the financial space. And in our work as ILO in Uganda, the FSPs with whom we have been working, it is the first entry point because it is a collateral substitute, because it is a risk reduction mechanism. So in when you were speaking, you were mentioning, you kept one partner, partnership. So partnerships, and we've heard it also in the plenary, and it's a Tunisian saying that says that only one hand, you cannot upload with only one hand. So partnership is extremely important. So I wanted to ask you, in the work you've been doing, perhaps what is the one most important partnership that was transformational in your work with refugees in Uganda? Whomever wants to start.
Yeah, I can go with that. Okay. you will allow me to give at least two quickly, because back in 2022, the end of that, was contacted by Cohere Charity, who was implementing the Refine project, and they wanted to create a support hub within Bondeko, within our organization. So we partnered on that to create that hub with a target of 200 people, and they could access services. We gave them training, business and financial literacy. We gave them training in digitalization, and then we linked them with service providers like Uganda and Opportunity Bank and Finca. Yeah, that's what we did. And then the idea we had, remember, we had already a VSLA we were testing, but last year we got an opportunity with the International Rescue Committee to submit our proposal there, which they funded, and we became the implementing partner of the Rebuild project, so which we are doing, and we did the same, linking them with the financial institutions we are already working with, like Uganda, Finca, Opportunity Bank. Yes, and we are trying to see how next year we are going to see how to add more of those financial institutions. So that's in terms of partnership, that's what I can say. And it has been, as I said, according to what Hanadi was saying, I advocate for localization, and through this kind of approach, because, you know, for about 7 decades in humanitarian ecosystem, they were more using the top-down approach. And so I'm among those advocating for a bottom-up approach. And when we have such partnership, yes, it's very encouraging, because we can implement with what we plan, because our way of our programs are coming from the community. Yeah. They are the ones to identify and to say what they want and the way they want it, because we include them in from the ideation, even the designing of the programs, and even the implementation. So they are part of all those steps.
So your partners are either on the funding space or on the collaboration, as where they use your services as well to reach out to more refugees.
Yeah.
So think of questions. We are going to open up very quickly to questions in case you want to share something.
Sure. I mean, for us, the partnership, it's important who you partner with, of course, and our partners have been mostly the local MFI, so Yuga Food, Vision Fund, Uganda, and BRAC Bank in Uganda. And on the advocacy and the strategic side was UNHCR, of course, the refugee agency. But it's not only important who you partner with, it's important to know how you partner. And I think many partnerships end up, especially if it's, say, an international and local partnerships, the international partner starts parenting the local. So we should stop doing parenting of local organizations and partner with local organizations. It's very important, because they know their business, they know their market, they need support. They don't need you to tell them what to do. Because sometimes you know the market, but you're not there. And sometimes imposing things can lead to problems later on. So how to partner, trusting your partner, being transparent with your partner, building a relationship whereby when your partner has an issue, they can come immediately and tell you what the issue is, instead of being just a compliance, ticking boxes kind of partnership. I think this what helped us a lot with our partnerships.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, to back up what Hanadi had said before about the COVID time, which is a bit of a pivot, but Opportunity had the same experience. The refugee clients paid back better than the non-refugee clients. And we also didn't know why, but I liked your explanation. Thank you. On partnerships, 100%, we can't say not. I mean, I think it's all been said before, but particularly as a financial institution coming into a humanitarian context, when we entered the space doing the stakeholder mapping, our kind of first, visual was there are the refugees, there's the bank, there's UNHCR, there's OPM, there's the refugee organizations, there's all of the INGOs. I mean, there's the funders as well. So 100%, there isn't just one. It can't happen without.
Thank you. So we open up, I'm sure you have many questions. You want to dive even more into Uganda and the realities, challenges, and opportunities. So the floor is open in case someone has a question. The mic will, here.
Hi, I have a question for Paul.
Okay.
I was just wondering, as an organization, to what extent do you also invest your efforts into changing maybe a more cultural mindset, social norms, if we're talking about focusing on women, how do you convince communities, but also male champions possibly, to be receptive to that idea? Do you do any work there?
I didn't have I didn't get well your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll repeat. I thought it was a bit loud for me, but to what extent do you as an organization also focus on changing social norms? So working with community, but specifically men, in ensuring that women have that opportunity to be financially included?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you see I underscored the fact that 65.9 are women in our, because we are more on women empowerment, and we have helped our communities to understand that, because Bondeko work with the refugees from different nationalities. So if you reach out to our organization, you'll find that you have different communities. You have Somali, you have people from Eritrea, you have people from Congo, you have people from Burundi, Sudan, South Sudan. So, and every community have their own way of perception of, so we had to also, we have that conversation between them. We create that conversation, because during the formation of the VSLAs, we had with one of the communities, we had the difficulties when we wanted to have a mixed group of 30 people, but mixed with the different people. And in some community, they were like, no, they can't be together with women. So, and we respected that, but at the same time, we keep the conversation, and there is things are changing. Yeah.
Any other question? Yes.
Hi, whoa, loud. Annelot from FMO, and I actually have a question for Tamsin, if I say it correctly.
Yes.
I'm like, FMO invests in a lot of financial service providers, and I wonder, Opportunity Bank came with this initiative by itself, or was it some external force that gave them the idea to enter the refugee market?
So it's a good question. So as Opportunity International, we are currently the majority shareholder of the bank. So the relationship is very close. And arguably it was us that sparked the idea. But then, like I said, that very first visit was myself, the CEO, and one of the project managers from the bank. So yeah, I guess the spark came at that stage from us. But what I can say from Opportunity Bank now is it's firmly embedded in their strategy. And if they had their way, they'd be opening branches in multiple settlements tomorrow. Just takes a bit of time. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you think from a high level that that's the only way for banks or financial service providers to be interested?
No, not at all. But I think 5 years ago, the context was different. There's a lot more banks, I'm speaking from Uganda particularly, but I know globally it's different. But in Uganda now, there's a lot more interest in financial inclusion than there was 5 years ago. So I think things like the business case, evidence to back up some of the results that we're seeing, forums like this, discussions with the likes of Bondeco, it's just so apparent now. Whereas 5 years ago, we genuinely were like, can we do this or not? And we've proven that we can. And obviously exactly what's been coming from your work with CEDAW as well. Yeah.
So the last question.
Also, my question is for you, Tamsin. You've mentioned that it's been pretty hard or even expensive to link the VSLA groups with formal financial services. I was wondering, first of all, my name is Natasha Bryce. I work for CARE. And I know we have been doing a lot of work with the government of Uganda. So I was wondering have you seen any changes, or is it still, are you referring to currently or in the past? Because I know that the government is very receptive, and we are doing work on helping them adapt their policy to include VSLAs.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if there's any change or.
I'm not sure how diplomatic I should be. So I think there are practical changes. However much advocacy happens, we all appreciate what it's like to be a VSLA group member on the ground, far from any district office, with limited ability to move. When you arrive at the office to get your paper stamps, someone at the desk isn't there, you spent all your money, you don't know why you're doing this in the first place, the parameters change. So however much the enabling environment is made positive, when you talk to clients on the ground, they'll tell you, I went 4 times, I can't do this anymore. I don't know why I'm doing it. But I mean, recently there's been an additional, the reason I talk about diplomacy, I'm not very diplomatic. There's been an additional requirement by, I think there's a requesting for a TIN number now. So it's like a tax registration number that's coming in from one of the departments, the taxation department from the government. So this is an added layer of complexity, cost, and the VSLA groups fear, why do we have to register with this? What are the implications for us in terms of taxation? So again, it's a process, and you make a step forward, but then another department comes in and takes you a step back. So please continue with the advocacy work. We need it. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, and also for you, Bandeko, we have a lot of gender work. So let's talk, because our expertise is really helping communities, especially organizations that are doing VSLA, to really bring the gender aspect.
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. And the VSLA methodology we are using, it's the one we copied from the one from CARE. Yeah.
Great, partnerships in the making. Thank you very much. So we will have 2 minutes break so that we can change. Don't move, or if you move, don't go far and come back quickly. But before, join me in thanking our great panel. Thank you very much. And the 2 minutes start now. Okay.
you doing?
It's too sharp. I think it's a good timing to go back to. Okay, so welcome again, re-welcome to the second part of this session on deep dive, and we'll look at an ecosystem approach. So the financial ecosystem has many parts, and in the first part we have seen some. So refugee-led organization, we have seen an investor, we have seen an international NGO. There are other parts. There are regulators, and I'll encourage you tomorrow to, so there is a session that is looking also at the regulatory standpoint and point of view and the importance of regulations for financial inclusion. But there are also other parts that are on the non-financial services part. That can be research. So we have a representative from someone who will tell us what research has been done. And we have also someone from an organization that defines as facilitator and matchmaker and capacity builder for the ecosystem, non-financial. And we have the financial. So we have an investor, fund manager, and we also have a donor. So don't introduce them, I'll let them introduce themselves, and I'll ask them a question before the question. So we decided that you will be the masters of this session. So actually this would be the one and only question I'm going to ask. Once they answer, you'll be the masters of this session. So we have 50 minutes. You'll be the ones asking the question. So get ready. Okay, we agree? Okay, so my question to you. Who are you first? Where do you work? And what is the intervention that you are the most proud of that you've been doing lately in the space of refugee access to finance, livelihood building, and all of this? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I can start first. Okay. So my name is Swati. I'm a consultant. I'm a financial inclusion consultant. And I was part of this research called Finance in Displacement. And we did a very deep dive research in Jordan and Kenya, and there were two other countries which were part of the research. And so the research started with the question of what are the financial services needs of FDPs in these two countries. But early on during the research, we realized that people are interested in other things apart from financial services because of all the barriers they face in setting up their livelihoods. And financial services become relevant only when livelihoods are able to evolve and grow and become robust over time. And we had the flexibility to zoom out a little bit and try and understand how financial services play a role in that in that journey of livelihoods. And that's what was exciting about the project, and we had some interesting findings from the research as well.
So a question to ask, what were the main exciting research?
She's planting and also facilitating at the same time. Hi, everyone. We're really excited this group collected. So I'm Barry Shorey, and I run the Refugee Initiative and Disaster Program at the Conrad and Hilton Foundation. The Family Foundation, I have no discounts at the Hilton hotels. So shucks. There are two things that I'm super excited about. One is with our combination of what's really cool about Hilton is we both have program-related investments and grants. And so we do this blended finance method when we can. In my portfolio, there's this cluster of work, which we're calling refugee lens investing. And it's this idea of looking at a combination of grants for technical assistance and loans and program-related investments for funds or organizations that are making investments through a refugee lens. Kiva is one of our folks that we're investing in, so you'll hear a bit more about this from Lev, but the idea that we're thinking not just about refugees as recipients of humanitarian aid, but ultimately how can refugees be people and things and businesses that we invest in and include in financial services. The second is, I think, which the panel last time set up really importantly, is our work as a foundation to support locally led development. We right now are operating with about 65% of our refugee investments are made direct to local actors. So those are refugee-led organizations, local private sector, local municipalities, and government ministries in the 4 countries where we work. And the importance of this is we want to see solutions for refugees that needs to be done by refugees themselves. And so really thinking through how philanthropy can be catalytic, both in terms of refugee investments and thinking through blended finance, but also in direct funding to local actors that are closest to the ground. And then I also just wanted to do a really quick plug. Can everyone in the room stand up if you are a financial service provider or an MFI that is giving direct loans to refugees? Can you guys just stand up? Stand up. I just like huge shout out. There haven't been enough of you speaking, so I want to make sure that also we can direct some questions to those folks in the audience that are doing the actual work. I'm very privileged that I get to fund them. I don't have to do the work anymore. I did that for a long time. And so I just want to hear more from you guys too. So would love some questions and conversations directed at those folks in the audience too.
Great. Very nice to meet you all. My name is Barbara Scola. I work with Mercy Corps. At Mercy Corps, I manage the relationships with our French donors. I see colleagues from Agence Française de Développement back there. And that's also why I'm speaking about refugee financial inclusion, because Agence Française de Développement funds one of our refugee financial inclusion programs in Uganda. We also have heard from Bondeco. We partner with Kiva. I see Yuga Food there, Vision Fund. So yeah, partnerships, all super important. So I'm excited about that, but I'm also very excited about, talking about the ecosystem systemic approach. Some of you here know that I've been pushing for more systemic approaches in financial inclusion for the last 10 years or so. And now I'm really excited to be working for an organization who actually does this and not just talks about that. And we can talk more about what that means. Over to you.
Thanks, Barbara. Hi, everybody. My name is Lev, and I am with Kiva. Can we get a quick raise of hands of who has heard of Kiva? And leave your hands up if you've ever made a loan on Kiva. All right, pretty good. So, that is basically what Kiva is. We're a crowdfunding platform for social good, where anyone can visit our website and make a loan to an entrepreneur somewhere around the world. We're in about 80 countries. And I specifically lead our work with refugees, which kicked off in 2016. There's been so much talk in this session before, and then also before lunch, about the learnings of why refugees or how refugees are so creditworthy. And that wasn't always the case, right? If we look 10 years ago, very few financial service providers and MFIs were lending to refugees. And so it's amazing to see everyone stand up when Barry, you asked your question. But we started using our crowdfunding platform specifically to catalyze lending to refugees, given that you all, the people putting in $25, were taking on the risk of default. So it made our funding uniquely risk tolerant. So fast forward to today, we're at $35 million or so that we've crowdfunded and facilitated through our network of local FSPs in the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America. And refugees have a repayment rate of 96.4%. So again, we've heard that all morning, but that's the stat that we've seen, and that's actually slightly higher than the overall repayment rate that we have for non-refugee borrowers on Kiva of the $2 billion that we've lent. So I wanted to put a number behind kind of what we've heard, and that's allowed us now to move beyond just this crowdfunding platform and bring in private sector institutional capital to further scale this work. So we launched in 2021 a $32 million refugee fund called the Kiva Refugee Investment Fund, bringing in much needed private sector capital because we need to crowd more funding into this space. And that's really what we've been able to do. And looking forward to continuing the conversation with all of you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yousra, what are you most excited about in your work?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Oh,
We haven't-
so I get also to be part of the panel and not only the moderator, since they are moderating.
Exactly.
Yes. So yeah, no, what I'm really the most excited about is the work that you are doing with FSPs. So the model that we have developed in terms of training and then taking them through a 1 year to 1.5 years technical assistance to transform whatever learnings to really to products and to processes.
Nice.
And to piloting within the refugee space. So can I say a second thing?
Yeah.
Okay. And also the fact that we don't only look at the supply side, but that we also work with the demand side. And the ILO as an organization that deals with decent work and that uses access to finance as a means to better opportunity and better employment, we also work with the refugees and host communities to strengthen their capacity in financial education. And we have developed a proper program of financial education for refugees that we are deploying in many countries, many languages, that is adapted to local contexts. But also there is all of the other realm of capacity building training, skills training, entrepreneurship training that the ILO provides, and that is also part of this ecosystem as well, and that complements nicely our work in financial inclusion. Audience. Philippe.
Okay, what?
Fortune favors the brave, Philippe.
Wow. Sorry. Okay, we talk about the ecosystem approach. I think I want to know, according to you, what is the main barrier of building an efficient ecosystem for refugees? The main barrier, if you have one, which one is it right now? And if you do have solutions.
So I'm going to call out my fellow donors. Yep. And so this is a hill that I've slowly started to die on. Very slow. But Lev and I have talked about this, and actually Mercy Corps and I have talked about this. I think the donor environment of insanely strict indicators and metrics in the refugee livelihood space is extremely soul-crushing, but also really restrictive, right? And so what happens is, and I'm obviously speaking from the donor perspective, they can go with other challenges, but what happens is instead of, and this is where philanthropy can play a huge role in being catalytic, what happens a lot with large-scale public donors or sort of other more restrictive donors is you say, okay, I want a project and I want it to achieve 10,000 refugees employed. And you're like, okay, well, you know, how are we going to reach that 10,000? Oh, let's do some skills training here, some skills training there. And it already designs the project versus approaching organizations and saying, you know, what is it that you want to achieve? Oh, you want to achieve a certain amount of technical assistance to FSPs, or you want to achieve a certain amount of VSLAs transitioning to potentially bank accounts, or you want to, right? And so I think the idea that donors place this very restrictive template or framework around refugee outcomes limits innovation and creativity and flexibility in the space of financial inclusion, particularly. Yeah. It takes a long time to get a refugee a bank account. It takes a long time for saving. It takes a long time for accessing a loan. And donors want to see short wins, right? And so that is intention.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, and I do have a slide on something that we've been talking about in the last few sessions, but just to help us visualize it so that it etches in our minds. So like all of our focus, the people who are sitting in this room, our focus is on financial inclusion, right? It sits on the top of the pyramid. And when we actually go and hear FDPs and what their financial goals are and try to understand it, we realize that and you know, we are building on the premise that once FDPs have access to certain financial services, such as a bank account or a mobile wallet, they can begin to save, invest, they can build credit histories and be able to access loans. And even with access to finance, have credit and be able to, you know, set up small businesses and slowly graduate. However, below the financial inclusion level lies another two very important levels as well, something that we have been discussing. So at the foundation level, are there those laws? Do they have the right to move freely? Do they have the right to work and integrate into the labor market? Are the social norms working to support them in achieving their financial goals? And even if those are in place at the meso level, at the infrastructure level, can people actually move? Is it easy for them to move around? Do they have the right information? And even if laws are in place, are the you know, the ministries or the bureaucrats or the branch staff, are they actually aware of the rights of FDPs? So it's really going down, zooming out a little bit and looking at what are the other inputs that need to go so that financial services actually become meaningful for FDPs.
Thank you. I'd really like to jump on that if you don't mind. I think it's just, thanks for giving us a framework to think about the broader ecosystem, and there are many others out there. But I think, when we talk about the ecosystem approach, and I'll get back to your question, but, it's not just about working at the foundation level or at the infrastructure level. It's also how do we intervene so that we help local actors solve issues, constraints sustainably. And for me, that's where I see a big challenge. It's not so much, okay, we need to solve IDs, we need to solve skills building, we need to solve financial literacy, but, let's pick up the example of business skills development, of financial literacy, which is something that is missing in, I guess, most of the contexts. But then, okay, you can come in, you can fund skills training, you can even do that through a local partner like Mondeco, but how do you make that sustainably in the long run? Because, Mercy Corps, we have funding for 3 years, maybe we'll get another phase, but what then, So we have to think about this, and in a humanitarian context, in fragile contexts, it's complicated because we depend on certain funding sources that are not necessarily long-term. We also depend on, we create also behaviors and expectations on the side from our partners and even on the side from program participants about getting things subsidized, getting access to certain things. We heard this morning the challenge from Mikkel, from UNHCR. Well, there is an expectation for receiving funding in the long term. So how do we get from this mindset to something, to a more longer term vision in solving problems, delivering services in a manner that is sustainable in the longer run? Maybe it's less perfect, maybe it's more improvised, maybe it's different, maybe it's more digital, but we have to think about that in the long run. Otherwise, it's just, okay, nice for those people who benefited it during that 1.5 years when we were there, and then what happens? So for me, that's the key that we need to get to, and it's challenging.
Yeah, I think my panelists have said a lot, but kind of building on what you said, Barbara, the reality is that refugee financial inclusion is still much newer and more nascent than so many areas of the financial inclusion space, right? We've come a long way, but it doesn't have the same infrastructure that, say, gender lens investing or financial inclusion for women or agriculture does. And so I think it's led a lot of us, and we're certainly guilty of this at times, Duke, to swim in our own lane. And there's a lack of a coordinating body of where this should all fall under. And I know kind of Barry, as a Hilton, you're trying to change that some and bring people together, but I think we recognize or see that there's a lack of a kind of a sense of who should be that kind of player to bring us all together.
Perhaps from my own perspective and from the work of the ILO, and because also we are working this space from the humanitarian development nexus, so that we are able to leverage all of the partnerships, all of the work, and the mandate of the ILO actually is to strengthen local partners, to strengthen government, to strengthen workers' organization, to strengthen employers' organization that are extremely important in the world of work. So by working and strengthening, it's no way that the ILO goes and says, we know everything and we do everything. So it is in our ethos really to work and to strengthen local partners. And I totally agree with this. Also on what you said on donors, that's true that sometimes you have a straitjacket and you cannot move. But more and more, even if they don't label themselves as ecosystem donors, more and more donors are more flexible and willing, probably understanding also and being exposed to the realities of the development and of the humanitarian context, and are allowing to repurpose funds, to rechange, because as you said, we've been working in this space for, I don't know, 2-3 years. How many loans have you provided? But this takes time. Advocacy at the global level, at the macro level, building the capacity, going slowly and really kind of starting and incrementing the different steps.
What I worry in that is I've started to see some fellow donors being like, okay, now what are the ecosystem metrics? Right? And so you're like, now there's a whole conversation about how do you measure infrastructure change, or
How many policies have you
how many
changed?
policies have you changed in 6 months? And so I agree with you that I've seen this flexibility, but I worry then there's a shift to say, well, then, okay, if we're moving away from how many jobs created and we're talking more about infrastructure or ecosystem, then let's not fall into that same pattern we did with how many jobs created or how many trainings you gave, and say like, how many policies have you changed, things like that. So just a flag that I'm starting to see a lot of my fellow donors being like, how are you measuring that infrastructure change? Leave me alone. Yeah. Anyway.
But I mean, I'd also be curious, thanks to Barry, we know there's a lot of FSPs in the room who are serving refugees. What either were the biggest challenges you faced when starting, or what are the biggest challenges you face today? Because that's, I think, key is those are the challenges that are on the ground rather than what we're seeing as an investor or donor or kind of researcher.
I see Al Majmua, which is,
Oh, yeah.
I would love to hear from Ala about this.
Thank you for this. So talking about the ecosystem, I think I would like to mention again localization that Paul talked about. And I think that it's a key word in our discussion. And then amongst the challenges, I think that we still have a lot of issues around the nexus between humanitarian and development. So Barry, you left IRC. We had a lot of discussions. And unfortunately, when you left, did it pass on to your country offices teams? Where are the SOPs? Where is the sensitizing of the humanitarian staff in INGOs and UN agencies? Because I've been there for 25 years, working on the forcibly displaced for 12 years. And the rotation of staff in INGOs, in UN agencies, is like every time I have to start again from scratch and explaining and saying and talking. So I think that my wish would be that there are some SOPs they have in the drawers that they can, you know, pick up and really have crash course on it and really bring the nexus together. And in regard to the donors, I think it's very difficult for donors also to work directly with local organization. I understand it's a lot of management. And here comes the partnership with UN agencies, with INGOs, where we can actually build partnerships where the donors feel comfortable, because there is still the presence of an international body, and then they're willing to, you know, go further into the localization. I think it's a transition phase. We'll have to go through this. And then, hopefully.
So I would push you just a little and I think this is where philanthropy particularly, and those of us that have more flexible can play a role. And it isn't that hard to give to local organizations. And I think this perception of risk is very similar to the perception of risk of refugees lending to refugees, which is just a perception. And so I think what some of us in philanthropy are trying to do are to be, and we're not talking about these, you know, I know UNHCR does some local direct, but that's at 25K, right? I'm talking about how can philanthropy give 500 million, 2 million directly to local, helping local actors demonstrate that they can manage and then sort of act as past performance. So I do think there has to be an imperative of, there's this default to intermediaries or default that you need an international organization. And I think we have to rethink that and say, how can we do it directly to local?
So just, I don't want to take much time, but just to tell you something, I think that some of the discussion we're having here, we need to advocate outside.
100%.
One of the major issues that now we're starting to face more and more as FSPs is the AML, the anti-money laundering, the anti-terrorism. And I understand that for donors, it's a lot of pressure. And for us, it's also a lot of pressure because the requirements are becoming crazy. So
again, less pressure for philanthropy. So I think philanthropy is seeing philanthropic foundations as a first port of catalytic investment in local organizations. Yes, we have that, but not as much pressure as taxpayers. So I could talk about this forever. Shafi.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Shafi Nambobi, the CEO of Yuga Foods. Happy to be here and also to listen to the interesting topic. In Uganda, what I would like to mention is that institutions work together through various networks. Uganda Bank Association, also have Association of Microfinance Institutions in Uganda. And then we also have a local financial institution called ABI. And also there are various programs. So once the funding is put in those networks, there is effective collaboration where all the institutions are able to participate rather than investing, say, in one institution. So in that case, you're able to reach more. I would give an example of, I think Grameen Credit Agricole mentioned the various partners that they were working with. They were working with Ugaford, Vision Fund, and then BRAC. So when we do it that way, we're able to scale rather than looking at one institution. And of course, when we localize, it becomes easy because they understand the market, they understand client needs, and also every institution has different set of policies and procedures. For example, like on the issue of the policies, which is also the infrastructure regulatory framework, we're happy that in Uganda, the central bank right now collaborates as a partner, business partner, not a regulator. And that's why we see that they have been able to keep on supporting the various innovations. So this journey for financial inclusion for refugees, it started with financial institutions. And we're happy that the government has also picked it up. And as we speak now, it is one of the pillars under the financial inclusion strategy for the Ugandan government. And also at the central bank, it is also an area that they have also been able to create a desk for that. So I think once we localize, it becomes easy for the institutions to be also to be pushing the various regulators for them to be able to change any of the obstacles in terms of the policies. But if you are coming from outside, definitely you have to make appointments. I want to talk to someone, and whom are you going to talk to? So, but when we have local organizations, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
I think that's a really great point, Shafi. And Philippe, to your question at the beginning, one of the things I was going to say is the biggest challenge is the regulatory environment in many of the countries that are not Uganda. And one of my questions is always, how do we start to change that? So thanks for speaking to that, Shafi.